Header up.
Rob and Chris, they're on the air. Yankees, Mets, they're everywhere. From the Bronx to Queens, the diamond gleams. MLB talk, the ultimate team. NYMLB is the place to be. Rob and Chris with the pitch you'll see. Swinging stacks and stories fly. Baseball talk that's amplified.
And welcome to a new episode of NYMLB Talk with your host Rob and Chris as we cover the Mets, the Yankees, and all of Major League Baseball. Today, we were supposed to have a special guest, Mr. Danny Gallagher, huge Expos fan, wrote a bunch of books about the Expos and their history. He should be coming on. We're just having some technical difficulties with him jumping on. So before he jumps on, Rob and I will probably just get into some playoff talk because last night was a great game between the Mariners and the Blue Jays. Rob, what's going on?
Hey, hi everybody. Yeah, Danny is out there. We're trying to get him in the studio. Once we get him in that studio, let's see. We have. Let's see if you could hear us. Danny, could you hear us?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. All right. At least we got your audio right now. I don't know what's going on with your camera, but that's okay as long as we have something because we've been waiting for this for a long time to get into this. So as long as you could hear us and everything's good, we'll just now if you hit if you hit it's for some reason I don't know your camera's not on. Yeah, we're getting yelled at. It's about time. But anyway, all right, let's go. Danny, thanks for coming on. We want to talk Montreal Expos because it's really interesting. So why don't you tell us? You've written 10 books and you're about to write another one?
Well, I've got one coming out in 2026. That'll be my 11th Expos book. It's a big book that goes in to explore the life of Willie Davis, who played for the Expos in 1974. But it also involves a lot about Willie Davis with the Dodgers because he spent 13 years with the Dodgers. So the start of the book has about 6 chapters on Willie Davis, where I do an investigative report on Willie, going back to his high school days. 74, he had a great year with the Expos. He was voted the Player of the Year by the Montreal media.
Yeah, I definitely remember him. I'm old enough to remember him playing too. All right, so let's get into this with the Montreal Expos. Were you a fan from the beginning in 1969?
Yes, I was. I grew up near Montreal, actually near Ottawa, which is about 2 hours from Montreal. I went to a number of games, in person, either by the bus, a 48-seat bus, or driving down in a car. So I had a great love and passion for the Expos before I went on the beat to cover the Expos in 1988.
Oh, so and who did you cover them for in 1988?
Montreal Daily News and the Ottawa Sun and Associated Press.
Oh, so that's great. So you were actually inside. I didn't see that. So you were definitely an insider. You were in the press and you got to cover a lot of those Expos great teams.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So 88, my passion for the Expos was electrified when I joined the beat. I, always watching them on TV or seeing some games in person, but to get there and cover the team was really quite an honor.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine that was great. And so you definitely saw the Expos play at Jarry Park also, right?
I saw them play there a few times, but not that many. See, my memory of Jarry Park is this. George Foster. I was there with a few friends as fans. And I had two beers in my hand, one in each hand, and George Foster hit a high pop up, and it came close to me, and I didn't have the chance to try and catch it because I had beers in my hand.
I don't blame you, especially, well, if it was now, forget about it. Those beers now are worth a lot more than a George Foster baseball was.
Yeah. Yeah. So, see, go ahead, Chris.
Oh no, I'm sorry, Danny. I was going to ask you, what was the different atmosphere between the two stadiums that the Expos played in? Since you did go to the original one and then the newer stadium, what was the different experience for you?
Well, Jerry Park was a really tiny stadium, very intimate and very human because it allowed the fans to get really close to the players right at the fence of the railing. Whereas now, they're blocked off by usually fences. But Jerry Park was a really nice park for 6-7 years, and then they moved into Olympic Stadium, which was much bigger in cavernous and a closed roof, or sometimes when it wasn't closed because they had problems with the roof. But Jerry Park was a very intimate stadium because it, as I say, it allowed the fans to get close to the players.
Yeah, and Olympic Stadium, they say was pretty cold, not temperature wise, but I just mean the structure itself. It wasn't. I don't know how you feel about it, but from what I've heard, and I've seen many games on television, especially when the Mets played the Expos, and I saw that shot that Strawberry hit off of the roof. But they said that it wasn't that great a stadium for baseball.
Well, yeah, it had its ups and downs. It was built for the Olympics in 1976, and the Expos were basically kind of stuck with it or had to take it because that was a stadium built by, the city of Montreal and the province of Quebec and the government of Canada. So Charles Brownford, the majority owner of the Expos, would have preferred some other stadium, maybe another open air stadium or something. But because so much money had been spent on the Olympic Stadium, they had to stay there, and then they were there until they left in 2004. But it was huge. But when they had big crowds in there, let's say from 79 to 82, 83, that place was packed many times, and it was just really boisterous.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris, you wanted to ask him that stuff you checked out today, right?
Yeah, Danny, I was reading the article that you wrote in the Gazette. Just some of the things that it was about the Jeffrey Loria buying the Expos, and then instead of reading out the article, how exactly, or how did we get to the point of the Expos leaving Montreal and going to Washington? Like, how did the franchise get to that point?
Well, I guess it really started on November the 6th of 2001 when the Major League owners voted to contract or eliminate the Expos and the Minnesota Twins. Now, it came to be that Minnesota lawmakers did something to void that transaction, and baseball had to abandon that contraction decision. But within a few months, in February of 2002, Jeffrey Loria got a deal where he sold the Expos to Major League Baseball, and then Loria bought the Florida Marlins. Then John Henry had his long dream established when he was allowed to buy the Boston Red Sox. So, and then for 3 years, Major League Baseball owned the Expos. It was kind of a farce, really, to not have a majority owner or some kind of ownership group. But it was really sad that it came down to the Major League Baseball taking over the team. And people in New York, Major League Baseball would say that they could never get any proper ownership group to take it back from Major League Baseball. So in the last year or so, they established a relocation committee to find out where they wanted to go, whether it was Charlotte, North Carolina, or Portland, Oregon, or Nashville, or Virginia. But they settled on Washington, which had teams several other times before that.
Yes.
But yeah, so that's basically in a nutshell how it got to 2004.
You know, it is a shame because the Expos always had some great players, and yet they couldn't hold on to them. I mean, we could go down the list. Pedro Martinez, you know, Randy Johnson, Vlad Guerrero, Tim Raines, Andre Dawson, you know, Larry Walker. What a list of players, great players, Hall of Fame players. And yet, you know, the Expos just couldn't hold on to them. That must have really killed you, Danny.
Yeah, you know what happened? Up until 1990, from 69 to 90, Charles Bronfman was the majority owner, lots of money, and really supported the team in terms of money and salaries and so on. But when he sold the team and was purchased by a consortium led by Claude Boucher and maybe 10 or 12 other minority shareholders, they had very, very little money. So in the 90s and the early part of the 2000s, before the team went to Washington, they basically had no money. So you get guys like Pedro and Moises Alou and Mel Rojas, they let him go. And when the disaster of the strike ended in 1995, Boucher told Kevin Malone, the general manager, to trade Ken Hill, Marquise Grissom, and John Wetland, and they did not offer a contract to Larry Walker. So that was the epitomized the demise of the Expos and showed that they did not have much money to spend on these players.
Yeah, it's a shame too, but I remember all of that happening. And listen, I'm a New York Met fan. Chris is a Yankee fan, but two of my favorite Mets of all times, of course, were Montreal Expos. Gary Carter, of course, and my favorite Met as a kid, Le Grand Orange, Rusty Staub. I mean, I loved Rusty Staub when I was a kid, and you guys, I mean, it must have killed you losing like Rusty and of course Gary Carter to the Mets. And if it wasn't for Gary Carter, the Mets probably don't win the 1986 World Series.
See, Rusty Staub was at the early franchise hero from 69 to 71, and I fell in love with Rusty Staub because not only was he a great player, but I keep telling people that his given name was Daniel Joseph, which is my name, Daniel Joseph. So there was a connection between him and I. And, several weeks before Rusty died in 2018, I was able to see him at the hospital in West Palm Beach.
Wow.
And it was really sad that his health declined, and shortly after he died. See, Gary Carter probably should not have been traded after the 84 season, but Charles Bronfman did not like Gary Carter's salary of $2 million a year, or something like $16 million over 8 years or whatever it was. And he and Charles instructed the management group to trade Gary Carter.
Yeah, well, I'm sure glad that they traded Gary Carter. I mean, you guys got Hubie Brooks, who was a decent player, but he wasn't Gary Carter. He was the main part of that trade for that the Expos received. But that, I mean, another thing that really had to kill you that you lost Gary Carter. And another thing, not only did you lose him, he wins a World Series with the Mets. He becomes co-captain of the New York Mets with Keith Hernandez. And then when he enters the Hall of Fame, he wants to go in as a New York Met, but the Hall of Fame committee made him go in as a Montreal Expo. So do you have any feelings about Gary Carter wanting to go into the Hall of Fame as a New York Met, but he had to go in as a Montreal Expo?
Because he spent, 10, 11 years with the Expos, his connection in baseball was established during his time with the Expos. So it was fitting that the Hall of Fame actually asked him or told him that you have to go in as an Expo. He had 85 to 89 with the Mets. So it was kind of like he was with the Mets half the time that he was with the Expos. So his statistical chart was basically mostly established with the Expos.
Yeah, he had, just looking back, 12 years with Montreal and only 5 years with the Mets.
Yeah, that's right. So he came back again in '92 to make it
Yes.
close
How
to
was
it.
that? How was that when he returned and he had that big hit at the end, as kind of a goodbye to Carter? Well, how was that at that stadium?
I was there in that game, covering the game. It was electrifying.
Mm-hmm.
He came up there for the final bat of the game, and he hits it over the head of his former Expos teammate Andre Dawson
That's right.
for a double. And see, Carter usually pulls the ball to left field all the time, but for some reason he decided to hit it to right field. And there was some talk about whether Andre kind of just let it go to let Carter get a hit. But, Dawson had, kind of bad knees, and he was playing on the turf again that day in Montreal. But it was an exciting moment. He standing ovation, and he was turned into a pinch runner who came into the game, Tim Laker, who was supposed to be the so-called heir apparent to the catcher's position with the Expos. So it's kind of symbolic. Tim Laker never turned out to be the catcher he was supposed to be, but it was quite a day.
Yeah, the Mets and the Expos really have an intertwined history if you look at it, because Montreal played their first game in 1969 against the New York Mets at Shea Stadium, and they ended up actually winning that game, which, at the beginning of the season, 1969, that's no shocker after all the other seasons the Mets are coming up, off of. So the Expos win that first game in their history against the New York Mets. Of course, that year the Mets go on to win the World Series, the Miracle Mets. But then a week later, they win their first home game at Jerry Park too. So not a bad start for the Montreal Expos then.
Yeah, they had a lot of older players and some younger players. They used the expansion draft in 1968 to form most of their team. Like Manny Mota was the first pick, and they got Maury Wills, and they already had Rusty in the trade, John Bacabella and Bobby Wine, and the older players that Gene Mauch liked, the manager. So even though they were a bad team, Gene Mauch used the older players a lot, but it turned out to be not such a good year. They lost. There were 55 wins and 107 losses.
Yeah, well, that's not a shocker for a new franchise. We know what happened to the '62 Mets. And I forgot that Maury Wills. I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot that Maury Wills played for the Expos that year too. All these guys were way out of their prime, but still, to get to see like a Maury Wills play for the Expos, that had to be pretty cool.
Maury Wills, he came from Pittsburgh in the expansion draft, but Maury did not like Montreal, but it was kind of cool to have him for about April, May, June. Yeah, they traded him in June, so he was there about 3 months. And he was originally a Dodger and had some good years, and then he went to Pittsburgh for a couple of years. But you know what he did when he was traded to the Dodgers by the Expos? His career took off again. His energy was revitalized because with the Expos, he was playing half-heartedly, and but it was nice to have Mario Wells there for a few months.
Yeah. But that happens with expansion teams too. The 62 Mets had players like that were way out of their prime. And, they didn't have anything left. But the Montreal Expos, when they left, how did you feel when they left for Washington?
It was pretty tough after having seen them around, 36 years. See, up until September the 28th, September 29th of 2004, they were still on the schedule for the 2005 season. So it was all kind of a shocker when it finally was announced on the day of September 29th. Because like all season, there had been no indication that they were finally going to move the Expos, even though they had a relocation committee. And then, the last day, the Expos players went into the Expos office and cried and consoled with the Expos employees who were going to be out of jobs. And the night of the game was pretty sad too, especially after when the game was over and some of the speeches were made and a lot of people started to cry in the stands. And they hung around for a long time just to console themselves and amid the fact that the team was leaving.
Yeah. Listen, Rob and I, we've never felt that before our team's losing. I couldn't imagine the feeling of seeing our team leave, whether it's our baseball team, football team. Well, we wouldn't mind our football team leaving, but our baseball teams, we would not want to leave right now. How did that make you feel? Like, do you still root for the Nationals or did you cut ties right there?
I do not really cheer for the Nationals. I kind of like the fact that they won the World Series in 2019 because former Expo Dave Martinez was the manager. But the Nationals, for some reason, want to combine the stats of the Expos and the Nationals, but I'm not in favor of that. I just rather that they use their own national statistics and leave the Expos alone. Although they have honored some of the Expos players with up in the wall at Nationals Park, but no, I don't really like the idea of the Nationals taking over the Expos.
Right.
Yeah, sometimes when you look up stats, they have, and I hate this. I'm going to tell you, I hate this. Like if you look up Gary Carter, right? They, instead of the Expos, they have the Washington Nationals on some of these stats.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. When I see that, it drives me crazy. Stuff like that drives me crazy. I know, Chris, that would drive you crazy too, right?
Absolutely. And Danny, here's the big question. In 1994, Expos had the best team in the league. Number one, do you think they would win the World Series? I think there's no doubt in your mind about that. But number two, if they do go on to win the World Series, do you still think the Expos would have left, or do you think they would have figured out a way to stay in Montreal?
I think there would have been a good chance of the Expos staying there because if they had the revenue for the playoffs and maybe the World Series, they would have been able to keep that core of players, and it would have been a sort of a dynasty for a few more years because they've been able to sign these guys to multi-year extensions, but they didn't have the money coming in the winter of 94 and 95. It was just a real tragedy. And then, Claude Bouchou wanting to sell those guys and not offer a contract to Larry Walker. But definitely, I think it would have been the impetus for getting a new ballpark built in downtown Montreal with the core group of players contending year after year.
All right. What was your initial thoughts when you first seen Randy Johnson come up for you guys? Did you think, wow, this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer? Did you see him as a future Hall of Famer, or did you say, oh man, this guy's just a rough prospect and I don't know about him?
This is Larry Walker.
Randy Johnson. I'm sorry.
Reggie Jackson.
Randy Johnson, the pitcher.
Yeah. Sorry, my hearing is not good.
That's okay.
Okay. Yeah, Randy Johnson. I was there when he pitched his first game in the major leagues in Montreal, and but certainly he had a lot of potential because he was tall and he could really fire the ball, close to 100 miles an hour. But in those years when he was with the Expos in 88 and 89, sandwich around time with the in the minor leagues, he had control problems. But so in 89, it was a gamble that they would trade him to Seattle with Gene Harris and Brian Holman for Mark Langston. It was a real, to this day, everybody is talking about the pros and cons of that trade, because Randy Johnson went on to be a Hall of Fame pitcher, and he won 303 games, and just a fantastic pitcher with so many no-hitters. But at the time, the Expos, Charles Brompton, the owner, gave the general manager Dave Dombrowski the go-ahead to go and make the big trade, and they had to give up 3 big prospects for Mark Langston. And in the end, Mark Langston, the Expos went to a slump in August and September, and they finished the season at 81 and 81. And Charles Brompton, he got so mad, he said, "I'm selling the team." So then Mark Langston, he did not come back. He signed with the Angels.
You know what, though? You did listen. Let's talk about 1981. All right. Why don't you give us your feelings about the 1981 season?
So 79 and 80, they had really great teams that almost made the postseason. Really, really good teams, but there was no wild card, so they never get into the playoffs. But so the next year they changed the format because of the strike that happened in the middle of the season, and the Expos won the second half of the National League East and made the playoffs with the Wallace Johnson 2-run triple against the Mets. Your Mets, Rob, on October the 3rd of 1981.
I remember.
And, so that what got them into the National Division Series against the Phillies, and they went up against the big vaunted Phillies and beat the Phillies 3-2. And then they, went into the National League Championship Series against the Dodgers and did, pretty good against the Dodgers. But in the 5th game, Rick Mundy hit the home run off Steve Rogers, and it broke the hearts of the Expos and the fans and ownership and management. But it was a real tribute to the franchise that they finally made the playoffs after so many years.
Yeah, the split season. That's right. And then for those years, the Expos had really good teams. I was suffering again. The Mets were really bad after 77. The Mets were horrible until the early, like 83. So I had to suffer through this, and the Expos would always kill the Mets. Always kill the Mets. I mean, I remember that. And the Expos always had some great teams, and it's a shame that it ended up like this. It really is, because you guys deserve a team. Do you follow the Toronto Blue Jays? I mean, I know Toronto and Montreal, there's a distance between them, but there's only, that's the only team left in Canada. Do you follow Toronto at all?
Exactly. I've been cheering for them since they came into American League in 1977. Yeah, I've always been cheering for the Blue Jays. They won in 92, 93. I was still when that happened. I see in my Expos pages on Twitter and Facebook, a lot of them are Expos followers. They kind of kid me when I put posts up about cheering for the Blue Jays. But always following the Blue Jays.
Yeah. Well, the same thing happens here because Met fans and Yankee fans, listen, if you're a true Met fan, you can't be a Yankee fan. If you're a true Yankee fan, you can't be a Met fan. I don't care what anybody says, right, Chris?
I totally agree.
You know, I've gone to Subway Series games where some guy will be wearing a Mets cap and a Yankees jersey.
Oh,
you can't do that.
Yeah, no.
You see, we were talking about Reggie Jackson before. So 1976, the fall of 76, the Expos made a big bid to try to get Reggie. They offered him a 5-year deal for $3 million, for $5 million, but Reggie turned it down and went to the Yankees. So when Reggie hit those 3 home runs in the 77 World Series, that solidified Reggie as my all-time favorite player. And to this day, Reggie is my all-time favorite player. Because, the Expos, if they had Reggie, it probably would have put him over the top in 79, 80, and 81. But the Big Apple beckoned Reggie, and he went to New York.
Yeah, Steinbrenner wanted Reggie, so Steinbrenner got Reggie, right, Chris?
Basically, yeah. All right, Danny. Here's a good question. I know a lot of people bring this up. Oh, if they ever expand, they should, go to Montreal. The Expos. We need the Expos back in baseball. Danny, do you think that there's a chance that we're going to see the Expos back in Montreal? Is there someone in Montreal trying to bring a team up there?
Right now, it's kind of bleak. For a few years, Charles Romplin's son, Stephen, was very intrigued by the split city, sister city concept with Tampa Bay, whereby half the home games would be played in Montreal. So for like 40, 41 games would be played in Montreal. But that process was thrown out by the Major League owners in January of 2022. And since then, there has been no one who has come forth interested in being a majority owner or a minority shareholder. But I can tell you, maybe you guys know it already, I'm part of a group interested in bringing baseball back to Montreal. It's called Players on Deck Working Group. And right now, we don't have any investors, but we've been pursuing a number of investors since September 30th of 2024. So right now, there's nobody there, but we're going to continue to try to get investors because with expansion coming, let's say in 2029, what we need is a new stadium. I think that's one of the first things that has to happen. And for an expansion team, you probably need about $2.3 billion US for an expansion franchise and another $1 billion US for a stadium. So those are big stumbling blocks. But our committee is committed to try to keep this energy going for another team.
Yeah, because the Montreal Expo fans, no matter what you say, they were always passionate for their team. I mean, I saw it. Montreal, like I said, Montreal used to kill the Mets in the late 70s and early 80s. And those crowds, you guys had crowds there. But I'm very intrigued by all of this stuff with the Expos. I have to tell you, and I'm really enjoying this. How was it since you were with the press? How you started to tell us, but were you in the locker room the last game that the Montreal Expos played in Montreal?
That particular game, I was not at the game. So I'm just, reading the interviews and the newspaper clippings. So all I can say was pretty sad.
Yeah, it had to be sad, right, Chris? Could you imagine?
I can't. I really can't imagine the Yankees leaving. I know, for a couple of years we kind of heard the threats by Steinbrenner. Oh, if we don't get a new stadium, we're going to move to wherever, Jersey, upstate or something. I'm like, it's not happening, right? You
Right.
know, New York was going to figure it out. That was just, that was just the fake threat just to kind of get the ball rolling, literally to get a new stadium. But yeah, I couldn't imagine. It would break my heart. And Danny, I'm sure your heart is still broken to this day, that they left.
See a T-shirt there, Chris. You're supporting the Expos, buddy. It's you see the logo. The Expos logo is still very popular these days.
Yes.
The hats and the merchandise and the uniform tops, and it's still a fairly big seller in sporting goods stores and the lids stores and so on and so on.
Yeah, you know what? I was going to say, I visited Montreal. I was only there for about like a half a day with my wife, my daughter, and my dad and his girlfriend, and we went there. We drove up, and I mean, stores were just, everywhere, whatever store we went into had some kind of Expos merchandise, T-shirts, cups, something. So it's easily one of the best logos of all time. I mean, sports logos, not just baseball, easily one of the best sports logos of all time.
And I'm sorry, Danny, young kids wear it all the time. I see it all over the place.
Yeah.
I just saw a message, maybe somebody sent it to you guys. It's too bad that Montreal doesn't have a George Steinbrenner as an owner. Well, that's the kind of guy we're looking for in Montreal with lots of money. But it could come down to a majority owner and then a fair number of minority shareholders.
Yeah.
So, we're in talks with different, millionaires and billionaires to, I can't say who, but we've been talking to a lot of people, about our situation in Montreal. It'd be interesting to see what happened. See, it's my opinion that it would be very embarrassing if there was nobody from Montreal making a bid for an expansion franchise. I do not want that to happen. There has to be some sort of action, and we're going to try to see if we can get somebody to put out the financial clout to buy a team or get an expansion team.
What about George O'Leary from Shark Tank? Isn't he? He's Canadian, right?
He's got a lot of money, yeah.
Yeah, and he's got a lot of money. So there you go. There's 2 check marks right there for him. That would be great. I mean, I know I would love to see the Expos back in Montreal. I mean, instead of one of these other cities down here, because it would be great for Canada to have another another team anyway. I mean, you just got the Blue Jays now, so why not put another team up there? I think it would be great.
See, what I'm trying to do is, as you know, keeping the Expos legacy alive with all of my books. I'm putting a lot of energy into all these books and showing fans that there's still a lot of love for the Expos through my books.
Danny, your one book, because I was looking over your books, always remembered the new revelations and old tales about those fabulous Expos. I'm going to pick that up. I want to read that book. Why don't you tell us a little about that book?
That one is about Gary Carter on the cover. It's a lot of tales about the Expos from 69 to 2004. That's how I write a lot of stories from start to finish at the franchise. Stories on part-time players, star players. I really like the part-time players who don't get enough recognition, and maybe some players that nobody's ever heard of. But see, I talked to the story on Gary Carter is that he came up from California and was a really hot prospect, but he started out as an outfielder, but he was turned into a catcher about 1975, and that's how he made his passion in baseball was through the behind the plate.
Yeah, and he was great. I mean, for the Expos, perennial all-star. For the Mets too. That book, that's going to be my first book I'm going to read of yours, though, because that one caught my eye. And now that you talked about it a little, I definitely want to read that. Everything about the Expos 69 to 2004, really, really interesting. One of our viewers, Dan, wants I think he's asking about if there was interest from the Montreal Canadiens. Is that what that looks like, Chris?
Yeah.
It's possible. Jeff Molson is the majority owner of the Montreal Canadiens. I don't know if our group has approached him, but we definitely will approach him. It's interesting, what will happen as far as any ownership groups. But I see the question about Rush and Geddy Lee. He has a great friendship apparently with Warren Cromartie, the former Expo. See, Warren Cromartie, about 2012, from 2004 to 2012, there was no talk of anybody trying to drum up interest in getting a new team in Montreal. But in 2012, when Gary Carter died, Warren Cromartie started beating the drums for a new franchise. Like Cromartie had no money, but at least he was, beating the drums to try to get interest. And then Stephen Brockman, came along about, I think it was 2017 or 2018. But then his idea about the split season concept just didn't work out. But Cromartie is kind of still in the background, and he's helping us trying to get investors from Japan. Warren is still in Japan a good part of the season. He has to spend a good part of the year. He's having spinal cord problems after spinal cord surgery, so he has to spend most of his year in Japan. So he's trying to get Japanese investors. It'd be nice if something happened.
I wanted to, before Chris, if you have another thing, this is in my head. I just wanted to bring something up. Vlad Guerrero and Vlad Jr. I mean, both stars in Canada. What do you think about Vlad Jr. as compared to his father? Could you give us your impressions of what you see with him, especially in this? I'm sorry, Chris, especially in that series against the Yankees, where he just killed the Yankees last week. What are your impressions about Vlad Jr. Versus his father?
Vlad Jr., what he did against the Yankees is what most fans and media would like him to do, like Vladdy Sr. did on a consistent basis for the Expos. Vladdy Jr. has had some great moments earlier in his career when he was hitting all those home runs in the minor league ballparks. But there has been years where he's been sort of just solid and not a great ball player. But this year, we thought he should have been doing a lot more. But he needs to push the needle a little bit more to be as good as his father.
Yeah, now did you see him as a kid since you were with the press? And the past week they've been showing a lot of video, especially last night they did, of Vlad Jr. as a kid with a little Expos uniform on at Olympic Stadium with his dad. Do you remember seeing him as a child?
I don't. I'm just seeing the same videos as you guys and the photographs.
Mm.
But it really turned out good that Vladdy Jr. has some tremendous potential to be a great ball player like his father. He still has lots of time to do that. He just has to do it on a more consistent basis every year.
Yeah, you know what? Chris, there was just something of, he had it in him. He had it out for the Yankees last week.
Yeah, he hates the Yankees. He's made that pretty public. So it didn't surprise me how good, because he's always hit well against us, right? So it didn't surprise me. And the Yankees always have that one guy, more than one guy, unfortunately, that just crushes us, right? We had Ortiz for many years with Boston. Devers, thank God they shipped him to San Fran, so that got him out of there. But Vladdy has always been a Yankee killer, and I think he's going to be one of those guys that's just going to crush the Yankees because he just dislikes the Yankees that much. But he did have a great series against us.
Yeah, it's funny. In the month of September, Vladdy Jr. was slumping really bad.
Yeah.
So what he did against the Yankees, boy, that really propelled the passion of the Expos and his teammates to see him do that. He came through at the right time to be so great in all those games against the Yankees.
Yeah, he I know Chris is having nightmares about that series. And with Vlad Jr.
Whenever he got up, I was like, just walk him. If there's an open base, just walk the guy. Don't even bother pitching to him. But unfortunately, they went after him, and we see what happens. So sometimes
they could have been walking Vladdy, and the Blue Jays could have been walking Aaron Judge a couple of times. And in the series last night, the Jays in Seattle, the Jays could have been intentionally walking Cal Raleigh. But
well, what are your thoughts on what are your thoughts on the series?
Well, I'm hoping that the Jays would win in 6 games, but Seattle has got a really good team from top to bottom. A lot of thumpers. I think a little bit more offense than the Blue Jays, but the Blue Jays have a lot of heart. They have a lot of middle of the road players who are having career years, unsung heroes like Nathan Lucas. I call him Cool Hand Luke's after the movie Cool Hand Luke. Yeah. And Ernie Clement. They're having career years as middle of the road players.
And last night, I'm going to tell you the truth. Seattle impressed me because you figured Seattle was going to be tired after that 15-inning win against the Tigers the other night. And then they had to travel all the way across the country to Toronto. So you figured, well, maybe they're going to be out of it. But I'll tell you, last night, even with, and it drives me crazy with these bullpen games, Danny, you have to be like us where you prefer old time baseball. These bullpen games drive me crazy where they don't have a starter. They just have to do that. I mean, how do you feel about the bullpen games nowadays?
They're terrible. You talk about the old time pitchers like Nolan Ryan and Greg Maddux. They must be just killing themselves to see this happen. That game, the Jays had the bullpen game against the Yankees, and it was very, very successful. But on a general basis, I do not like it. It's just it cheapens the game. There should be a starting pitcher all the time. But Tampa Bay, I guess they started that thing quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
And a lot of teams still following, but there should be a rule that in the playoffs that should be allowed.
Oh, we totally agree. We couldn't agree more. That's the one thing when the postseason started, whether your team was in it or not, that was the one thing that you always looked forward to, right? It was the big matchups, right? The ace versus the ace, the second pitcher versus the second pitcher, just the great pitching matchups of years past, are gone. Once in a while you'll get, 2 guys line up and it's like, oh, great, we got a pitching matchup, and they don't even last that long anyway, right? They go up to the 6th inning at best now, and that's about it. That's the other thing that's kind of killing the game. But I think the game is what it is, unfortunately. We still love the game, but it's just changed so much.
Yeah, it definitely has. Now, Danny, let's talk real quick about Montreal Expos managers. If you had to pick one of your favorite managers, who would that be and why?
I would say Felipe Alou, because he turned the franchise around in '92 when he took over from Tom Reynolds. They weren't doing very good with the Tom Reynolds, the disciplinarian. So Felipe came in. He should have been the manager about 10 years before that. But he got them playing aggressive, fire wagon, offensive baseball. And some of those guys who had a new passion for life after Tom Reynolds was let go. They're very discontented and unhappy with Tom Reynolds, and Felipe just flipped the switch and they really turned it around, and they had a good year and to finish off in '92. And then they had the great year in '93 when they won 94 games and lost only 68, and then no wild card that year, and they didn't make the playoff. And then they had the great year in '94, and then, you know, with Felipe, there was consistency. He was there from '92 to 1991, and the fans loved him, and the media loved him. He was a great quote. He had some great stories about his past as a player. He was the perfect match to be a manager of the Expos.
Yeah, I agree with you. He was a great manager when he managed the Expos. We got a couple more minutes. We want to ask you for your website to promote that group so people could go check that out. So if you could give us that again, we'll get the word out. What is the website or the group? Is the group on Facebook? I know I saw it somewhere, but if you could tell us.
On Twitter or X, it's Danny Gallagher 7, DANNO Gallagher 7. That's my Twitter handle or the X handle. And on Facebook, it's just basically my name, Danny Gallagher. But I don't have a website. But you know, people who want to communicate with me, you know, they can also. My email address is dannogallagher@rogers.com, DANNO Gallagher@rogers.com.
Yeah, if you want to get in touch with Danny, because listen, this to me, this is just so interesting. I love stuff like this when we, you know, get away from the Mets and the Yankees, especially now, Chris. You know, we need a little rest from thinking about the Mets and the Yankees.
Yeah. You know what? Pick up one of Danny's books, right? To read, go back in history and read a lot about the Expos history. Got some up there right now. Definitely check them out on Amazon for sure. Yeah. For us Mets and Yankee fans, instead of contemplating on who we should sign, who we should trade, fire, and all that, you know what? Just relax for a little bit and read a nice book about the Expos and their history, which will bring you a lot more enjoyment than the offseason for our teams right now.
Yeah, really. And before, Chris is going to ask you a question we always ask our guests, but I just wanted to mention one thing. Since you said you like players, you know, you like unknown players or players people don't remember or really don't hear about, we're actually going to have someone who briefly played for the Expos on our show 2 weeks from today. He played for the Expos in 1980. He was a pitcher, and his name is John D'Acquisto. He pitched. He was 0-2 in 1980 for the Expos, and he pitched in 11 games for the Expos. So he's going to be a guest in 2 weeks. That's going to be interesting to talk to him. So he's a former Expo that we're going to have on, Danny.
That's great. You know, John D'Acquisto in the 1980 final game of the season against the Expos, Mike Smith hit the home run off Stan Bonson to win that game and gave the Phillies the National League East championship. But in the bullpen with John D'Acquisto, who had a great record against Mike Smith. See, Stan Bonson and John D'Acquisto had Mike Smith's number. Smitty was like, I don't know, 5 for 25 against both of them. they had Mike Smith's number, but Dick Williams did not know that John Acusta was really good against Mike Smith. So he put Stan Bonson in there, who had a good record against Mike Smith, but Mike Smith got a hold of one, and that ball is still going.
Yeah, you know what? Thanks for that information, Danny, because I'm going to ask him about that when we have him on in 2 weeks. So that's a great little information we have there. And our audience has really enjoyed you today. We really appreciate it. But Chris always asks our guests one last thing. So Chris, go ahead.
Yes. One last question for you, Danny. If you were named Major League Baseball commissioner today, what changes would you make to the game? I know adding the Expos back would be probably number one, but what would be next after that?
I think the first one would be cancel the ghost runner in extra innings. I would like to see expansion, of course, which is something that's going to happen in a few years, and Montreal would hopefully be one of the teams. But other than that, I'm not sure. I know that they got to get rid of the ghost runner, but I'm glad that they brought in the rule that to cut down the amount of time for pitchers throwing to the plate. I think what is it, about 13 seconds during regular season. I think it's more in the playoffs, but
yeah, it definitely speeds the game up. I like the pace of play now because of it. I hate that there is a clock, but I do appreciate it because the pace of play is so much better now.
Yeah, and everybody, Danny, everybody says the ghost runner. That's like the number one. That's number one. I mean, it's so great. Imagine if they had the ghost runner in the playoffs. We wouldn't have got to see that great game on Saturday night between the Tigers and the Mariners. So, thank God they don't have it in the playoffs. But anyway, Danny, we want to thank you. Listen, we love to have you come back on again. We'll get your camera thing figured out and talk more about your books and
Danny, if you're going to write a new book, if you want to promote it on here, definitely come on and we'll definitely promote it for you as well.
Okay, look at guys. It's been a real pleasure talking to you guys, and I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you both for reaching out to talk to me and give me a chance to offer some opinions on the Expos. They've been gone for 21 years, but they're still alive in the hearts of many people in Montreal and Plattsburgh, New York, and Burlington, Vermont, and all parts of Canada.
Yeah, definitely. They are. And it would be great if Montreal got a franchise again. But anyway, all right, Chris, do you have anything else you want to add?
No, just Danny, it's been a pleasure talking to you, and we'd love to have you on again someday. Like I said, if we, write another book, or if you just want to come on and just talk baseball, talk the Expos again. Real quick, what are your thoughts on the I know it's coming out soon, is the Netflix documentary about why
that's a very interesting documentary coming out on October the 23rd. It's called Who Killed the Montreal Expos, but it's going to be like a business kind of a documentary where people maybe will be blaming people on why the Expos left. It's going to be talk about, a lot of it has to do with the kind of the poor fan support. That's one reason people are talking about Jeffrey Lloyd kind of, screwing things up. It's going to be, that's what it's all about, is talking to a lot of people to find out the reason why the Expos left. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. Yeah, for sure.
Did they ask you to be a part of it at all, or no?
Yeah, they did, but they never got back to me.
All right.
Too bad. That would have been great. We're looking forward. Me and Chris were talking about that. We're looking forward to seeing that too. But anyway, thanks again. It's been our pleasure. Everyone out there, Friday night, 10 p.m. I don't know who our guest is yet. We're going to have someone, but I can't say anything yet. And in 2 weeks from today, we're going to have the former Expo pitcher come on. So that's going to be a pretty good episode too. So until Friday night at 10 p.m., we'll see everybody. Thanks for watching.